They built their business on bootlegging.
Sam Bronfman found himself doing business with people including Al Capone.
One of Sam's brothers-in-law was shot one night.
At Prohibition's repeal, they went legit with popular brands like 7 Crown whiskey.
The traditional drink for millions of Americans became 7 and 7.
They turned Seagram into a global titan of whiskey, wine, gin, and rum. Then diversified into movie studios and music.
It was much more respectable to be big man in films and entertainment than in liquor.
But their success had a tragic cost. Brother battled brother.
Sam was particularly brutal to his siblings, the male siblings.
Then, one heir risked it all for a shot at glory.
They lost at least $2 billion, and it meant the end of the Seagram liquor dynasty, that's for sure.
The rise and fall of Seagram. The Bronfman story. On the morning of June 20th, 2000, Edgar Bronfman Jr., a 45-year-old Canadian businessman, stepped up to a press conference mic to announce the sale of Seagram, the company his family had run for 3 generations. Seagram was an empire of liquor brands, including 7 Crown, VO, and Chivas Regal. A cash cow that had bankrolled the family's purchase of Universal Studios.
Seagram had one of the great Hollywood studios. He had the biggest music company in the world, Universal. They had theme parks.
For $35 billion, Bronfman was handing it all over to Vivendi, a French media conglomerate.
Today marks a beginning of one of the world's leading communications and media companies.
You could see how the combination made sense on paper. Vivendi had a significant cell phone business, telecom business. They had Canal Plus, which is a major film production company, film and television.
The new company, Vivendi Universal, would be based in Paris, with Jean-Marie Messier as chairman and Bronfman as second in command. Their vision was to create an entertainment empire to rival the newly merged AOL Time Warner. It was a high-stakes gamble that could make them kings of a brave new media world. But there was an unseen flaw in the deal.
The deal was done at the height of the dot-com boom. The Bronfmans were paid in shares in Vivendi.
Messier and Bronfman celebrated their new venture, unaware that share prices were about to plummet. It was a perilous moment for the liquor firm that had already seen many changes since the mad bootlegging days of Prohibition. The Bronfman saga began in Canada in 1889. Eichel Bronfman, his wife Minna, and 4 children were Russian refugees fleeing from anti-Semitic mob violence. They settled on the frigid plains of Saskatchewan.
When the Bronfman family immigrated to Western Canada, they were given a fair amount of free land.
Their fate was the same as many Eastern European Jews. Canadians were anxious to keep the strange newcomers at a safe distance.
They were really undesirable immigrants, and even the rich Jews from the East didn't want to have anything to do with these newcomers.
Eastern European Jewish immigrants. They spoke Yiddish, they looked funny, they were not the German or English Jew that Canada was used to, and that really marks the beginning of anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism was one challenge the Bronfmans faced. Weather was another. Eichel, who had been a prosperous farmer back in Russia, tried to till his new land.
He brought some tobacco seeds with him, hoping to grow tobacco, but found, of course, in southern Saskatchewan, the climate was against him, and that was not going to work.
As tough as it was, there was tremendous opportunity to carve prosperity out of the cold wilderness.
Canada in the period from 1896 to 1911 thereabouts was one of the most dynamic economies in the world. The frontiers were opening up, towns being built from scratch, and suddenly there's 50,000 people.
Eichel got a job in a lumber yard and sold scrap wood on the side, eventually setting aside enough money to lease a hotel in Emerson, Manitoba in 1903.
It Hotels were very important in these little railway towns, which had nothing except a railway link to the outside, because all the commercial travellers stopped there, the local workers drank there.
The hotels all featured a bar. The Bronfmans quickly found that there was not much money in the hotel business, but there was a lot of money to be made in the liquor business.
The Emerson Hotel was the Bronfmans' key to a new life. They prospered, and Minna and Eichel's family grew to 10. The 4 girls were expected to marry, and 3 of the boys, Abe, Harry, and Sam, went into the family business, dropping out of school to go to work. Abe and Harry managed hotels. Initially, Sam, 7 years younger than Abe, just helped his brothers. But in his retelling of those days, years later, he made it sound as if he were always out front.
Sam made out that he was king of the family from day one, which was manifestly untrue.
Of the 4 boys, only Alan, the youngest, finished his education, going on to law school. He became the object of Sam's most intense jealousy.
Alan got an education, he became a lawyer, and Sam hated this, my brother the lawyer, because he was a much more civilized human being.
By 1912, 23-year-old Sam managed a hotel of his own, The Bell. He is said to have turned a profit of $30,000 a year, an enormous sum for the time. Liquor remained the secret to the family's fortune. But there was a serious threat to the Bronfmans' income: temperance. The movement was gaining steam and threatened to shut down the bars.
Prohibition was going to cause some real problems for Sam Bronfman.
The Bronfmans would cross the law and risk life and limb to turn setbacks to their advantage, bootlegging their way to one of the world's richest fortunes. In just 20 years, the 4 Bronfman brothers, Harry, Abe, Sam, and Alan, had risen from poverty to wealth in Canada. The 3 oldest brothers ran hotels, where bars produced most of the profits. But in 1914, they faced ruin. That year, World War I began, and thousands of young drinking-aged men marched off to the trenches of Europe. At the same time, prohibition laws swept the country. Province by province, the bars closed down. But the whiskey didn't just disappear.
You might as well have tried to outlaw eyesight. I mean, it just wasn't going to happen.
Illegal booze found its way from backwoods stills to big city speakeasies. But the homemade whiskey was of questionable quality.
You might buy 2 bottles of whiskey at the same time with the same label. One bottle would be fairly palatable. The other bottle you couldn't drink at all. It was so terrible.
There was one way to get a legal drink. Liquor could be prescribed as a drug and dispensed by pharmacists.
Prohibition in Canada said, well, you can manufacture the stuff. We're not going to change that. But you can't sell it anymore. You can't sell it in public places.
Harry Bronfman got around the ban by opening a drug company in Yorkton and importing liquor to sell as a drug. Sam got a wholesaler's license to legally move liquor around the country. He and Harry could then sell liquor and stay on the right side of the law. As the liquor business expanded, competition between the brothers, always at a fever pitch, intensified. Though Harry had demonstrated significant business acumen, 3rd brother Sam had always been the most aggressive, ever pressing to gain an advantage.
Sam was among the youngest of his siblings, yet he ended up the dominant brother.
Their aging father Eichel could no longer maintain family unity. And when he died in 1919, Sam quickly seized the reins of the family business.
Sam claimed that before his death, his father had named him as head of the family. I don't think he did, or that was just one of Sam's claims when he was trampling over his brothers. Sam emerged as head of the family by sheer brute sort of ability and brute force of character, really.
Once Sam took over, he was openly disdainful of his brother's business abilities.
He was constantly denigrating them in every way, humiliating them in front of employees. The business was Sam's, and Sam was going to run it the way Sam wanted to run it.
I think it's probably the darkest side of him is the way he treated his brothers, in his need to take credit for everything.
Shortly after Eichel's death, a new opportunity opened up. Just as Canada was beginning to relax its prohibition laws, the United States suddenly went dry. Now the Bronfmans' biggest customers were south of the border.
Prohibition in the United States made Canada's liquor industry, because there was this enormous thirst the other side of a 4,000-mile frontier, completely unpoliceable frontier. And that was the great opportunity the Bronfmans took.
The Bronfmans were ready to slake America's thirst. American bootleggers traveling in cars, boats, and trucks began slipping over the border in the dark of night to buy the Bronfmans' whiskey.
They had these warehouses called boozariums, which were scattered along the little towns to the north of the frontier with the United States.